Hello and welcome everyone to the mains PYQ discussion by Neva IAS. Here we are going to discuss a question about famines in British India. The question is from 2022 mains. It goes like this. Why was there a sudden spurt in famines in colonial India since mid 18th century? Give reasons. So the question keyword here is why. We have to explain why there is a sudden spurt. So famine is there in Indian political setup or Indian economic setup ever since ancient times because it's a loose setup, it's a land based setup, and it's a monsoon based setup. So famines will happen. But here we have a sudden spurt, and the time period is mid 18th century. Since mid 18th century, that is from 1750s onwards. So, what exactly is the problem that is happening since 1750s? That is the key to this answer. So we'll start by defining what famine is in the first place. Famine is acute shortage of food and subsequent death of people due to that. Alright? That's the definition. Now the Indian case after 1750s is directly linked to colonial exploitation. We'll make that point in the introduction. Because if you see the colonial case in India, 1740s onwards you have the Carnatic Wars. Because British is gaining control over the French. Second, you have the Battle of Plassey, 1757, Battle of Buxar, 1764, Battle of Bedara, 1759, where the British defeats the Dutch. Then you have the permanent settlement, the Governor General of Bengal. Everything is happening since 1750s to 1800. So it is the same time period that is seeing a sudden spurt in famines as well. So we'll just mark that colonial exploitation in the introduction. We'll also give a map where we will give various famines. I've given that here. Odisha, 1866. Madras, where you have the Great Famine, 1878. Bengal, 1770. Deccan, 1900 onwards. Now, you can see the map here. This is the region of severe famine. It is the region of intense famine. In fact, the dark region, severe famine is the region like this. You can give any of these, mark it in the map, and that will be enough. The core of this question is not this, but why? Why did this happen? And the first reason is the revenue settlement policies. And the example can be the permanent settlement. Here, the revenue is permanently fixed by the British with the Zamindars. And the fixation was so high that even Zamindars had to sell or auction their lands. So imagine the plight of the peasants. That is the first reason. Second, debt and money lenders. Now, when the demand is so high, to meet the demand, the peasants will incur debt and the money lenders will further exploit the peasants. So their agrarian distress worsens. So that's the second reason. Third, there is prolonged malnutrition and vulnerability. Now, famine is not something that happens all of a sudden. On one fine morning, there is no food, there is famine. It doesn't work like that. Famine, when you have prolonged malnutrition, that can also cause famine because you will be very vulnerable. So whenever there is a shortage of food, a failed monsoon, you are susceptible to death because you have malnutrition. Next up, there was a floods in 1770s which destroyed the agriculture. So that intensified the famine. So four reasons already given. We have three more. Next is lack of mitigation measure. So when the famine is there, the British can in fact come up with some mitigation measure, but they didn't. So this is the time when British adopted the policy of double government, where they will have the princely state at the power who is responsible to the people, but the actual control is with the British. So they'll control the Diwani and Nizamat. Because of this, nobody took the responsibility. So lack of mitigation measure is one reason. Next up, subversion of land. For what? For cash crops like indigo, opium, and cotton. They needed opium for the triangular trade with China. They needed indigo for the industrial revolution in Britain. And cotton obviously was a major exported item from India. For all this, cash crops, food crops were sidelined. So that leads to famine. Finally, deforestation, especially in the central provinces. Deforestation, they do that because wood is needed for the industries there. Second, wood is also needed for the expansion of railways. So because wood is used to lay down the racks. We'll conclude this answer by talking about the drain of wealth. That is getting India, looting India's wealth ever since their invention in the invasion, that is 1757, which can be taken as a break here. And when India reaches 1947, every indicator, every economic indicator is at the bottom. So, a systematic deindustrialization, systematic looting of wealth takes place during the British time, and the famines is a direct byproduct of that systematic loot. So, that's the crux of this answer. We have given 7 reasons to substantiate this. That would be enough. Thank you for listening.